And there are other issues I was going to skip down to. I know the transplant issues are hot one. I was going to skip down to the Department of Health issues in our own state that just happened real briefly, because that's a hot topic too. When your legislature gets charged with determining, in Washington State we have a limitation on how much marijuana you can have that's very ill-defined. It's called a 60-day supply. It was in the initiative. I didn't have anything to do with it. But you're not supposed to have any more marijuana than you can reasonably use for 60 days. So there have been all these arguments, and they've tried, they've used this as a way to screw up the law for years. The legislature last year passed a bill tasking the Department of Health, tell us what a 60-day supply is. So in your materials, there are 2 papers that are super important, in my opinion. They are papers by Greg Carter, Sunil Agarwal, Maraka Krishnatoka, Don Abrams, and others. These are cutting-edge papers that you can use with prosecutors, and you can say, look, this is what medical marijuana patients need. When you run into those cases, anybody that defends medical marijuana patients, that they use staggering amounts of marijuana compared to recreational users. You're not talking ounces, you're talking pounds.
By the way, Chris, do you publish a book on this, specifically on dosage, don't you?
Yeah, and Chris is part of this. Chris is cited by our Department of Health. The interesting thing, is that his work and Carter's and these dosing papers, complement, I think, Chris's work really well, and the 2 that you have provided in your materials. They are cutting edge. They show basically a 60-day supply. In Washington, they urge basically a little over 4 pounds, 71 ounces. Nate Miller's sitting back there, Marijuana Policy Project. They helped us kind of popularize the 71, 99. There was a recommendation for 99 plants, obviously, to keep people out of the 5-year mandatory minimum. But 71 ounces was supposed to be the presumptive 60-day supply. That means if you had less than 71 ounces when they come, they are supposed to not prosecute you and leave you alone if you're a medical patient. Those are the figures we were trying to get adopted that are based on science. We had public hearings, all that kind of stuff. There was a leak, some of the proposals got out, the governor flipped out, law enforcement got back involved, they wanted to call secret meetings to lower this and cut all kinds of deals behind back and everything, and that's where we've been at the last 2 weeks. If you look at the Seattle Times, you can see front page articles about, the governor lying and this happening and back to our meetings and all this crap. That's what happens, and of course, nothing new to anybody here in Colorado. Brian Vicente and Warren and all these guys know all about it. But I'm stuck in it right now trying to get reasonable limits for patients.
They haven't reached the final number yet?
Well, they put a preliminary number out of 35 ounces, which is what flipped out law enforcement and the governor, but there was an error. They had used a pharmacy student's paper, and if you correct the pharmacy student's paper, you get right back up to where we are with the 71 ounces and in Carter and Agarwal's paper.
Is there likely to be a plant limit also?
I don't know what they're going to do. Law enforcement, of course, wanted 3 ounces and 6 plants, which, wouldn't keep some of the medical patients that I represent, wouldn't keep them alive for a day. But that's the kind of numbers they're looking at. There's this tremendous amount of ignorance out there about marijuana as medicine, and every time you're in a situation like this, you're fighting it. So, as well as the effects of the drug war. Are you pretty much, okay. What time is it? Does anybody